Hello out there, and here's what we're going to do today, guys. We are going to take a quick look at this new released Spyderco fixed blade. This is called the Bow River, designed by Phil Wilson. And then after we are done going over some of the details of this knife, I want to stay on the topic of fixed blades and talk about steel preference and steel requirements when it comes to what people need in a fixed blade. And in that regard, I really need your feedback because, as you might know, I don't have a lot of fixed blades on the channel. The ones that I do have are pretty budgety and, not high end because I don't have much need for anything very fancy on a fixed blade. So I want to hear from you. Like, what do you use fixed blades for? What steels do you prefer? What's a functional need versus just a preference? All that kind of stuff. And we will transition into that in just a minute and I'll explain why. But for now, I want to talk about this knife and go over some of the details. And it sort of fits with the theme that I'm going with because we do have a budget fixed blade here from Spyderco. So this is a $32 to $40 knife. It has 8CR13 MOV blade steel. And so, yeah, that makes it just a little bit different in the catalog that Spyderco has because they haven't done anything quite like this in a while. And this knife is full flat ground, very attractive blade, I think. The designer Phil Wilson sort of made this with the idea of having a general all-purpose utility knife for an outdoorsman. And this seems to be a pretty good blade shape and seems to fit the bill for something like that. The cutting edge that we have here is just shy of 4 inches. You'll see the blade length listed as 4.5 inches, and that's really just because of, the extra steel before you get to the scales. But let me grab the ruler real quick since I don't have the mat down. And you can see that our cutting edge is going to be just shy of the 4 inches. So a good overall length. And the way that it fits in the hand, it's very comfortable in the hand. Doesn't have any jimping, so again, you just have to keep in mind what you're going to need and what your preferences are and what this knife is going to be used for. But it doesn't really seem to slide around. We'll get into weight in just a bit because I'll weigh this knife with the sheath that it comes with. And as we move on back, the thing that I can really remark on is the fit and finish. So there's some really good looking finishing on this knife. One big blemish that I'll get back to in a moment. But yeah, I really like the way that all these transitions are made. There's not really anything in terms of gaps. It's just done very nicely. You can see we do have pinned together construction, so this won't be something that you can really change the scales out on. But the pins, like I said, everything's sanded and finished nicely. We do have a very big lanyard hole, so any kind of cordage that you're going to be strapping onto this one should be pretty easy and standard to do that. Now, the big issue that I have with this knife, and I'm not sure if it's a design intention or if it's just a cosmetic blemish. I think it's a cosmetic blemish, but you might already be able to see it, is that the cutting edge, the secondary bevel, just like stops. So I would think with like a forward choil, well, I guess that's what that's what I'm calling it. But I would guess with just this like finger groove that you would have that cutting edge go all the way down to this point here. And it doesn't. So we have a dead spot like right here on this knife. Let me see if I can get it even closer. I'll insert a picture as well, just if this isn't focusing. But yeah, so we have just a dead spot right here. Again, I'm not a fixed blade expert. This might be something that is done regularly. I don't know. But the fact that this is a budget knife and you have, a budget knife kind of cosmetic issue, it just seems to make sense and correlate. But it's definitely something that does not appeal to me in the looks department, and it's not something that you'd want functionally because, at least for me, with the knives that I use, I usually start my cuts pretty far back, and so having that dead spot would be a pretty big issue. So the good news, it being 8CR13 MOV, this could be sharpened and reprofiled and fixed pretty easily, but that said, we're not all capable of doing that, and it wouldn't be very easy for me to do that as well. So just throwing that out there. When we get to the sheath, let's talk about that. So this is a pretty standard leather sheath. It's good looking. The retention on it is solid. What I really like about it, when you put the knife in, you have this point of resistance, and then you push in very far to get that like secondary tightness. Standard stuff, but it's done well, and that's definitely a good thing. I always have I always have a little bit of anxiety when it comes to carrying a knife not like deep in my pocket, especially when I'm outside, thinking that it might get lost or fall out. And this is really secure. I mean, sure, this will loosen up, I think, over time as it breaks in, but as it is right now, it's very good. We don't have a drainage hole in the bottom of the sheath, so for those of you who prefer something like that, you might be able to just create one if you're in like high rain environments or you're going to get it wet. Otherwise, we do have a like loop over secured kind of belt loop carry. So this isn't going to clip on anything. You're going to have to like either tie a cord to it and strap it to something, or it's going to go on a belt loop. That said, I had some concerns when I first saw this that, hey, maybe the belt loop is not big enough for some belts. It was big enough for mine, but just take a look at the pictures I'm inserting and get a feel for it for yourself as to whether or not this one will work for you. All right, guys, so really standard, nothing really too out of the ordinary when it comes to this knife. Obviously, there's that one downer with the that dead spot, but overall, the look of the knife and the finishing on the scales, I'm really happy with, and I like the blade shape and the overall design in the $30 to $40 price range. Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent knife. But again, I'm not the expert, so the question is, what do you think about it? And what do you think of steel? So let's start talking about that. So the reason for this question, guys, is that I am in the process of working on a new Steel Talk video, trying to throw my opinions out there. And I've done this before, and I've talked about steel overall and my preferences and just the way that I look at steel quality and my steel needs on a knife. You know, but I don't really do that on fixed blades, you know, and I don't really have any context with fixed blades. And so what I really want to get an understanding of in the fixed blade world is, what do people prefer and what do they need? And where does the functional need stop and the preference to just have something nice begin? Because there's a lot of cheaper budget steel fixed blades out there. And what I want to really understand is, do those work for you functionally? And is the high-end stuff just something that you gravitate towards because you want something nicer? You know, for example, like if I'm using this Incosi as my EDC, like 9 days out of 10, if this were 8CR, you know, I'd be able to get everything done that I need to. You know, so functionally, I don't need the S35VN steel that's on here, to be honest. You know, some people do, some people use their knives differently, and I understand that, and I think I have a pretty good grasp of that kind of situation with folders, but I really don't know who uses fixed blades, how they use them, like how often people are outside, like what kind of jobs do you need that better steel for, and how does it work in, you know, the real world, and not just, hey, I really like M390 blade steel, so that's the one I want. You know what I mean? So that's really what I'm going for. I'd really like your feedback about it, just to sort of, you know, shape my opinion and get an understanding of what works practically versus, you know, what we just prefer because it's nice. All right, so that's my take on it, guys. That's my take on the knife and my appeal to try to get your feedback. So let me know down below what your thoughts are. Any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know about that as well. Stay tuned. I will have that Steel Talk video about folders coming relatively soon. Excited to throw my name in the hat and get my opinion out there for everybody to debate. All right, take care and have a good one. Thanks for watching.